All right, today we're jumping headfirst into one of the most cinematic stories in the book of John. It's an absolutely incredible and, believe it or not, super controversial story about the healing of a man born blind. We're going to go verse by verse and see exactly how one of the greatest miracles you can imagine ended up causing a whole world of trouble.
And that's really the question at the heart of this whole thing, isn't it? I mean, a man gets the one thing he's never, ever had, his sight, and instead of a citywide party, it kicks off this firestorm of confusion, interrogation, and ultimately rejection. So why? How does that happen? Well, let's dig in and find out.
So let's set the scene. Picture a dusty street. We've got Jesus, and we've got a man who has lived his entire life in darkness, a man whose whole identity is wrapped up in what he lacks. And just hanging there in the air is this heavy, and as we're about to see, just a completely wrong question.
Okay, let's walk through this. Verse 1, Jesus is passing by, and he sees this man. And the text makes it clear he doesn't just glance, he really looks at him, sees him as a person. But then, verse 2, his disciples see something totally different. They see a theological puzzle. And their question is so blunt. Who sinned? In their minds, something this bad had to be a direct punishment. So was it his fault or his parents' fault? And notice, the man himself, he's not even a person in this conversation. He's just the evidence in a debate.
And Jesus just completely flips the script on them. In verse 3 he says, "You're asking the wrong question entirely." This isn't about looking in the rearview mirror to place blame. This is about looking forward to see what God is about to do. Then in verses 4 and 5 he makes this huge declaration that connects everything. "As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." He's basically looking at this man's physical darkness and saying, I'm about to do something about that.
So how does the light get in? You might expect a bolt of lightning or a divine command, but no. It happens with something, well, kind of weird. Something earthy and very, very real.
Let's walk through this moment by moment. First, Jesus literally spits on the ground and makes a little bit of mud with the dust. Second, he reaches out and spreads this gritty paste over the man's blind eyes. Then he gives a command. Go, wash in the pool of Siloam. Can you imagine being that man? You've got mud caked on your eyelids, and you have to navigate through the city holding on to this one bizarre instruction. And finally, the payoff. He gets to the pool, he cups the water in his hands, and as he washes away the mud, boom, light, colors, shapes, faces. His entire world is born in that one single moment.
So the man who comes back from the pool is not the same person who left. And verses 8 and 9 tell us this causes total chaos. His own neighbors are arguing. Some are like, that's him, and others are saying, no way, it just looks like him. There's this buzz of disbelief until the man himself just cuts right through the noise with 3 simple words. I am he. It's powerful. With his new sight, he's found his voice.
And that brings us to his very first testimony in verse 11. When they ask him point blank what happened, his answer is just perfect. It's a straight-up, factual report. No big theological speech, no philosophy, just a man named Jesus did this, I did what he said, and now I can see. It's his pure, undeniable experience, and that's all he has for now.
But, of course, a simple, powerful testimony is not enough for the people in charge. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn. We go from a neighborhood miracle to a tense courtroom drama. This man's healing is officially on trial.
You can just see how the pressure cooker gets turned up, step by step. It starts with his confused neighbors. But then he gets dragged in front of the Pharisees, the religious experts. And their big problem? This all happened on the Sabbath. For them, making clay was work, and that was a huge no-no. So then they bring in his parents, who are absolutely terrified of being excommunicated, kicked out of the synagogue, which would have been social and spiritual death. And finally, they bring the man himself back in for one last intense showdown.
And right here, you see 2 totally different realities just crashing into each other. For the healed man, the evidence is simple. A man named Jesus did this incredible thing, so he must be a prophet from God. But for the Pharisees, the rule book is everything. Jesus broke their Sabbath rule, therefore he must be a sinner. They're both looking at the same miracle, but they are seeing completely different things.
And this is the mic drop moment. The Pharisees are trying to bully him, to force him to call Jesus a sinner. But his response in verse 25 is just genius. He completely sidesteps their theological trap and plants his flag on the one piece of ground they cannot touch, his own experience.
He's basically saying, look, you guys can debate all you want, but one thing I know for sure, I was blind and now I see. It's the one truth they can't argue away.
Then we get to verse 27, and you can feel his confidence growing. He's not just defending himself anymore, he's actually pushing back. You can hear the exasperation in his voice when he says, I already told you and you didn't listen. And then he lands this sharp, sarcastic jab. Why do you want to hear it again? Are you guys thinking about becoming his disciples too? Oh, you can just feel the temperature in that room skyrocket.
And he is not done yet. In verses 32 and 33, this man, remember, an uneducated beggar, lays out a perfect, airtight piece of logic. He says, listen, in the entire history of the world, no one has ever opened the eyes of someone born blind. You all say that God doesn't listen to sinners. So, if this man did this impossible thing, he has to be from God. He's got them completely trapped using their own theology against them. It's brilliant.
So they've lost the argument. They can't beat his experience and they can't beat his logic. The authorities only have one card left to play: brute force.
And there it is, in verse 34. Their response is just pure insult. They go right back to their original prejudice. You were born a sinner. How dare you lecture us? And with that, they throw him out. Just think about that. He received his sight, he spoke the truth, and for his reward he loses everything. His community, his standing, his entire world. He's an outcast, utterly alone.
But the story is not over, not by a long shot, because the man who is cast out by men is about to be found by Jesus. And we're about to see that this story was never just about a pair of eyes.
Jesus hears what happened, and he intentionally seeks the man out. And listen to his very first question in verse 35. It's not, are you okay, or that's terrible what they did. It's something much, much deeper. Do you believe in the Son of God? He is immediately taking this man from the physical healing to spiritual faith. He's inviting him to see something even more important.
And after Jesus reveals that he himself is the Son of God, the man's journey is finally complete. In verse 38, he makes that simple, ultimate declaration, Lord, I believe. And then he worships him. This, right here, is the true climax of the story. The man who started out blind now truly sees Jesus for who he is.
And this brings us to the great paradox, the great reversal of the whole chapter. Jesus explains his mission in verse 39. He says, I came into the world for this reason, to give sight to those who know they are blind, and to reveal the blindness of those who are so certain they can see.
This really lays it out perfectly. The man starts out physically blind but aware of his need, and he ends up with both physical and spiritual sight. The religious leaders, on the other hand, start out with perfect 20/20 vision, convinced they see everything clearly, and they end up in a spiritual darkness of their own making.
And this is Jesus' final, chilling verdict in verse 41. He turns to the Pharisees who are listening in and says, if you would just admit you were blind, you could be healed. But because you proudly insist we see, you're stuck. Their ultimate sin wasn't just being wrong. It was the arrogance that made it impossible for them to ever see the truth.
So the story kind of leaves us with a mirror. It forces us to ask ourselves, where are we so confident that we can see everything clearly, that we've actually become blind? It's a powerful question, and one we're thinking about long after this story is over.